Hi there, everybody. We're going to do the most exciting, stimulating video of the semester. We're going to look at the syllabus. There's just such limited time in our class sessions. We never get to everything, and particularly with my section being 2 credits, I'm going to have about 70 minutes every week. I'd hate to just spend 15, 20 minutes of that just reading a syllabus to you. I know you can read this on your own, though I do feel kind of obligated to make sure that I do talk about it a little bit and give some explanations, give you time for questions. So we're going to do that through this video, so we don't have to take class time to do it. The wonders of technology, right? I will have hard copies. Dr. Stroud and I will have hard copies of the syllabus for you in class. I believe he's going over his portion in class. He is a little bit longer than I do. So you don't need to print this out, but you may find it helpful in referring to it as we go through. So this is the first syllabus I've ever had that should have a table of contents. It's long. So we're going to go over the Sacramental Theology part, which is mine, and the Oblation Internship, which I'm going to oversee as well, at least on the Sacred Heart end. So you're going to want to go to page 11 in your version. Now I gotta figure out how to get there here. Okay, so we're gonna go through fundamental moral theology, and here we are on Sacramental Theology, page 11 on the hard copy. So on the top is all the general information with my phone number and my email. My office hours, prior to class on Mondays, I plan on being here. I have a class up until 5 o'clock, and then I'm planning on just being around either for evening prayer and or dinner, or meeting with students. So I am very available in the about hour before class and any other time. I hope you all find me very available. So feel free to reach out to me anytime via email or phone, stop by and we can chat. So here's the course description, what we're going to do in the moral theology piece. This course focuses on the nature of the sacred liturgy and the foundations of sacramental theology. Now, just right off the bat, sacramental theology, we're not going to talk in detail about all 7 sacraments. It was a choice here between doing many things in a very shallow way with our 15 sessions, or doing a few things in depth, and we're opting for the latter. So we're going to give you an overview of the sacraments in such a way that you can go and explore each of the 7 sacraments for the rest of your life. So we want to focus on the high-level things, the principles, the nature behind things. We're going to get into some nitty-gritty, but the nitty-gritty is all going to be based on principles. And we're going to look at theological principles of the liturgy and sacraments. Attention will be given to biblical, historical, and systematic understanding of these areas. There will be a particular focus on the liturgical rites, as what we call a locus theologicus. Got to have a good Latin word in there, meaning a theological source. It literally means a theology place. Locus theologicus, a theology place. We're going to look at the liturgical rites and rituals in particular as sources of theology. So we're going to offer a rites-based or mystagogical approach to liturgical and sacramental theology. That is, we're going to have our nose in the ritual books, particularly baptism and Eucharist, and we're going to focus on that exclusively. We're going to focus on that in the last part of the class. But the idea here is, yes, we have a rich systematic theology that developed over many centuries, but what we come in contact with on a weekly and sometimes daily basis are the rites and rituals, the sacraments. And so we want to draw our theology from them. So it's a rites-based or mystagogical. We'll talk about that word. Mystagogical means leading us into the mysteries. We're going to be led into the mysteries. Mystagogical approach to liturgical and sacramental theology intended to foster in the student, and I would say the instructors, the fully active and conscious participation in the sacred liturgy called for by the Second Vatican Council. So the hope is by the end of this digging into theology, yes, we have a greater love and deeper participation in the liturgy. So the student learning outcomes, here's what we're going to do. By the end of this course, the students will be able to, 1, understand the nature of the sacred liturgy and its importance in the Church's life in light of Sacrosanctum Concilium. Sacrosanctum Concilium is Vatican II's document on the sacred liturgy. So again, look at high-level stuff, the nature of sacred liturgy. What is liturgy? 2, articulate the principles of general sacramental theology in terms found in the Catholic tradition, such as institution, number, matter, form, minister, recipient, effects, causality, some good Latin words, sacramentum tantum, res et sacramentum, res tantum, and valid and fruitful celebration. This is the stuff from the General Principles of Sacramental Theology book that we're starting with, kind of those scholastic terms. 3, articulate an understanding of sacraments, which includes Christ as the sacrament of the Father, the Church as the sacrament of Christ, and the individual sacraments as personal encounters with God in Christ. We'll draw that out in the book by Syllabus, Christ, the Sacrament of the Encounter with God. So you can see 2 moving to 3 is kind of the classical moving into the contemporary. So I mentioned in one of the previous lecture recordings, we're going to look at a broad approach to sacramental and liturgical theology. And so 2 and 3 hopefully bring that out. You'll gain some various perspectives. 4, develop the historical development of Catholic sacramental and liturgical theology in light of contemporary understandings of sacrament and liturgy. So that's 2 into 3 is 4. We're going to look at the development of things. And hopefully you've already seen that in the first session, and we'll see it some more. 5, recognize practical ways to live out the theological meaning of liturgy and sacraments. That goes back to our course description, that this should affect the way that we pray when we're at the sacraments. 6, analyze the theological content of the liturgical rites of baptism and Eucharist in order to foster fully conscious and active participation in the Church's liturgy. So that's what we'll do in our last month of classes or so, is look at the actual rites of baptism and Eucharist. If we had another semester and this was 6 credits, we could look at all 7 sacraments. But as you'll see when we look at the historical piece, baptism and Eucharist are kind of central to the sacramental life, and so that's why we choose them. 7, contextualize the sacraments of baptism and Eucharist in terms of their scriptural foundations and historical development. 8, articulate the general Catholic understanding of the sacraments of baptism and Eucharist, their structures and their meanings of their constituent words and symbols. And 9, employ the Catholic understanding of sin, grace, salvation, and the paschal mystery in the sacraments of baptism and the Eucharist. So that's all taking the principles from 1 through 5 and then applying them to some individual sacraments. That will hopefully, at the end of this, give you tools to go and study the other sacraments in light of all of this. And then 10, examine proper liturgical celebrations of these sacraments as well. The text that we are choosing are General Principles of Sacramental Theology by Roger Nutt. This is, again, the kind of, and we'll have a chance to talk about this in the first class, what his methodology is and why he's choosing it, but it's the more classical kind of scholastic approach to the sacraments. And then up here on the right, we'll look then at a contemporary work, Christ the Sacrament of the Encounter with God. That kind of reinterprets that classical, the classical toolbox of sacramental theology in contemporary terms. The Wellspring of Worship, again, I've mentioned, this book is very poetic in its approach. That's the only word I can think of to use. It's very theological. It wants to get at what is the liturgy, but what is the liturgy in light of the Trinity, God's eternal life as Trinity, in light of the Incarnation? What is the liturgy in light of Christ's mission? What is the liturgy in light of the descent of the Holy Spirit? I don't think it gets to the actual celebration of the liturgy for 150 pages. It wants to put it in theological context. Jean Courbon, by the way, wrote the 4th part of the Catechism of the Catholic Church on prayer. So this book is, yeah, I can't think of another word but poetic. It's very, it uses symbols and metaphors. So for some of you, you will love it if that's the kind of thinking, the kind of way you think. Some of you will hate it if you are like if you're like me, where you like the precision, right, and the definitions and clear categories that the first book gives us. You'll hate this. Personally, I love to hate this book. I wish you would get to the point, but the point is that you need to contextualize the liturgy in these theological categories. So hopefully between those 3 books, you're going to see a a variety of approaches. That was really my my goal there. We'll look at the book At the Supper of the Lamb. All that reading is going to be optional, but it's a commentary on the Mass. And then I'll have a few various articles for you on populi. Okay, assignments. How are you going to get graded for my portion of things? First is class participation. As you know, the goal here is that we do a lot of this offloading of this kind of thing onto the online stuff. So when we come to class, I'm not lecturing at you. Now, I love to lecture. I could lecture for 3 hours. You've seen me do it. I want to minimize that. I really want to turn the class over to discussion and engagement and thinking. So class participation, as the syllabus says, includes asking pertinent questions, responding to others' questions. I'm happy to respond to questions, but I'm even happier if you're all responding to each other's. Making relevant observations, offering well-founded opinions, respectfully disagreeing. I'm quite happy when students disagree with me or with each other and really go after kind of a dialectic searching for the truth. Making connections with other readings, classes, or theological disciplines. We really want to integrate this semester with the last year. We want to integrate the two disciplines of fundamental moral theology and sacramental theology with each other. Relate material to concrete pastoral ministry. This is not just an academic exercise, especially with sacraments. You know, fundamental theology, when we did that, it's a little harder maybe to have some concrete pastoral ministry connections. Not so sacraments. This is very concrete stuff. Same with moral theology, huh? Engage in class discussions, in active involvement in class exercises, staying on topic, and demonstrating that you've been thoughtfully engaging the reading. Okay. At the end of all this, I have the breakdown of the percentages. Then, for me in particular, for the sacramental theology piece, I have what's called Sacramental Theology Project. And I'm giving you 4 options. So I figured this is not a one-size-fits-all. You're going to have different interests. So I thought, let's give some different possibilities here. So here's option A. So you have to do one of these 4. Option A dinner discussion with me. Okay. You have to explore the Oxford Handbook of Sacramental Theology, which is available from me upon request. You have to choose a topic or chapter. There's 1 topic per chapter. So you have to find a chapter or topic that you find interesting from that book. So the Oxford Handbook of Sacramental Theology is a series of articles by different authors, but it gives an overview of different topics in sacramental theology. Things we will cover, things we will not cover. And then you can scan the chapter if you want from that. Besides reading that chapter, you have to consult at least 2 other scholarly sources on that topic, as well as the Catechism of the Catholic Church where that's applicable. It won't be applicable in all cases, but if it is, you have to consult that. So you have to read the chapter from the Oxford Handbook of Sacramental Theology, and then you have to do a little research. Go out and get at least 2 other sources, plus the Catechism. The Oxford Handbook of Sacramental Theology will be helpful in finding the other 2, because at the end it gives a little bibliography. So this is a mini research paper without the paper. So your task is to teach about your topic over dinner. So you've done a little research. Now we're going to have a little discussion that you lead. What does that look like? Up here on the right, at least 1 week in advance, I need a little notice. Schedule a day to have dinner on Monday before class. That'd be 5 to 6 p.m. here at Sacred Heart. Now, that's the ideal. Because I'm here and there's rooms and it just works well. Some of you just, I know, cannot make 5 o'clock. Fine. If that time is impossible for you, we can discuss another agreeable time frame. Here's the thing. If you choose this option, if you want to do option A, you have to at least schedule your time with me by October 1st so we can at least get them on the calendar. So you have to let me know at least a week in advance, but if you're going to do it in December, I still need to know by October 1st. So if you're choosing this option, you got to let me know by October 1st and we get it on the calendar. With this option, your classmates are going to be invited to join us to learn about your topic. What I'd like to do is part of all these assignments is promote a community of learning, that we're learning from each other. So yeah, I have to evaluate you, but listen, you have the chance to learn from each other and to teach each other. Now listen, you're not required to attend anyone else's dinner, so I'll put the invitation out. You don't have to, because then I'd have to build that into the course that you're all coming to 15 hours of something. So it's optional. But you're highly encouraged to do so. It'd be great if 6 or 7 or 8 of us were sitting around a table a few times talking about sacramental theology. Now, you cannot pick the same topic as one you previously sat in on for another student. So if Bill chooses, I don't know, chapter 4 from the Handbook of Sacramental Theology and Deb sits in on that, then Deb cannot choose chapter 4 from the Handbook of Sacramental Theology. So you can both do it, but you can't sit in on you can't do one you previously sat in on. I hope that makes sense. So our time will be structured as a discussion. You're not going to be it's not a 60-minute presentation, but you are responsible to prepare for and lead the discussion. So plan on 60 minutes, and during that time, you're responsible for telling us why you chose the topic. Why did you find it interesting? Explain the major points you discovered in researching the topic. So there is a little teaching. You're leading a discussion, but you got to tell us the content, huh? Bring a handout with these bullet points, an outline, something like that, and include citations for all the sources you consult. So there should be a little tiny bibliography, right, with about three sources. During that discussion, you're going to be responsible for connecting your topic to the themes we've studied, particularly from Nutt and Skillebeck's, those books, where appropriate. Now, not every topic, and I'll know this, not every topic will tie into those two books. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, you're responsible for drawing some of that out. So the idea is, yeah, you're connecting what you're talking about to things we've talked about in class. Connecting your topic to other theological disciplines and or pastoral ministry where appropriate. So how does this connect to New Testament or to Christology or to theology of the church or to your internship, that kind of thing. Again, not every topic will connect to all those things where appropriate. Lead some discussion about the topic. Bring thoughtful questions of your own. If it's just me and you, I'll have to answer your questions. Hopefully it'll be a small group, and you know, your job will be to say to everyone, what do you think about X or Y or Z? Be ready to answer some general questions about your topic. No one's expecting you to be an expert, but you should have a good grasp of what's going on. Or maybe just to speculate. You're not going to be graded on, this isn't an oral quiz, right? So you don't have to come ready to be grilled. It's just be able to talk about it. And if you don't know the answer, fine. That's not going to hurt you. And then you want to point to further themes or readings to build on what you've learned. So I read this. These were the main points. Boy, wouldn't it be interesting to learn more about X, Y, or Z. Up on the right here again, you're going to be evaluated on how well prepared you come, how well you address those above points. I'm going to be asking for your own self-evaluation as input. So after we're done, I'm going to give you a sheet that says, what grade do you deserve? And I will highly take that into consideration. You have until the final day of class to complete this assignment. That's option A. So it's kind of a research paper, topic you want to look into without having to write the paper. So that's option A. Option B is going to be a paper, and it's going to look specifically at the two books on general principles of sacramental theology and Christ the Sacrament of the Encounter with God. So you're to write a critical evaluation of the sacramental theology represented in those two books. Consider questions such as the following for each book. How are the two approaches to sacramental theology similar? How do they differ? So that's just a comparison and contrast. My suggestion is that they do differ. That's why I chose them. What are the strengths to each approach? What are their weaknesses? Can the two approaches be harmonized? Should one supplant the other and get rid of the other? Or should they both be discarded? How or why? So give me an evaluation. Which one is more relevant? And what aspects of sacramental theology from these works would you find most useful in teaching adult Catholics about the sacraments, and why? So this is, you're taking the two works, you're comparing them, contrasting them, and evaluating them really in light of each other. Sorry for the cough. Papers are going to be graded using the Sacred Heart writing rubric. If you don't know what that is, let me know and I'll get you one. Assessing how well you critically evaluated the material utilizing these questions above or something similar. So I don't want you to limit yourself to these, but this is the kind of thing you're doing in that paper. You're welcome to be creative. All of these, by the way, the next three options are 6 to 7 pages, double-spaced, 12-point times New Roman font, citations according to the Sacred Heart Style Guide. That's due Monday, November 5th, so it's due earlier than the last day of class. Option C, this is a research application paper. This is if you want to dive into, we're not covering all 7 sacraments. Maybe you want to dive into anointing of the sick or matrimony or holy orders more. So you're going to choose one of the 7 sacraments and explain it in terms of the categories of sacramental theology represented in the books by Nutt and Skillebeck. So it's again looking at those 2 books, but now you're going to take it and apply it to one particular sacrament. In your paper, discuss things like, from the course objectives, right? Institution, matter and form, minister, recipients, effects, sacramentum tantum, res et sacramentum, res tantum. By the end of the course, by the way, you'll be rattling those off like your address. And valid and fruitful celebration, all those things that the Nutt book will address. Be sure to note if there are controversies or difficulties involved in any of these categories as applies to the sacrament you choose. Not every sacrament is as clear when it comes to all these things. You'll find that if you happen to do this research. And then consider also the sacrament as a personal encounter with God in Christ. That applies more to the book by Skillebeck. So you're taking those 2 books and then applying them to one given sacrament. You should draw on a minimum of 3 scholarly sources. You're going to have to go out there and research, confession, the sacrament of reconciliation. And you're going to have to do some research to draw these things out. 3 scholarly sources, particularly books and journals. That means no Wikipedia. No Wikipedia, ever, never, in a master's class. Not in my master's class, at least. And then no random websites found on Google. Google's a good start, but we want you to end up in the library. Please see me if you have questions about any sources. I'm very happy to help you. So will the library. For the purposes of encouraging a community of learners, again, to learn from each other, I'd like to post final versions with my emendations and corrections if necessary to populi as a resource for the whole class. So I'd love for you to have done this research and say, here, everybody, here's we can all learn from this. I wouldn't share any grades, of course. This isn't a requirement. You may, however, opt to have your name taken off the paper. So if you just want to remain anonymous, and you certainly don't have to share it, you can opt out and not share it at all. But I'd like to do that. And then the same requirements here for 6 to 7 pages. Oh, papers will be graded using that writing rubric, assessing also the thoroughness and accuracy of your response, given the length limit. So you can only be so thorough in 6 to 7 pages with all this. So you want to address it all. I'll take the length into consideration, that it's not a 50-page paper. So you just want to, this is what you're being evaluated on, is addressing these things. That's option C. Option D is, again, you're not getting your questions answered and you want to go do some research. If you're a research kind of person, you're going to just do your own Q&A. You're going to go do your own independent research. So you're going to generate a list of questions. I say 1 to 6. And that depends on how involved the questions are. One question may be incredibly involved, and that's all you have time and space for. Or they may be little mini questions that you can do in 1 page, then you can have 6 of them. So generate a list of questions regarding one sacrament or various sacraments, and then research the responses. Your questions can come from you, something you want to know, something from your Unum classmates that comes up in class, from family, friends, things you see on social media, common questions you've heard. But here's the thing, on the honor system, because there's no way for me to know, you cannot pose a question to which you already know the answer before you start the assignment. So that would be too easy. You have to actually go do some research here. It has to be something you don't know. You must, yes, you have to submit your list of questions to me for approval. I want to see what you're going off and doing, and maybe help you look at that. So before you go start researching, I want to see your list of questions if you choose this option. Then you're going to research answers, compose a response. Again, draw on a minimum of 3 scholarly sources, books and journals, no Wikipedia or random websites found on Google. Please see me if you have any questions. Same thing, I'd like to share these, but you can certainly opt out. And the same thing for all of the other requirements. So those are your 4 options. Some deadlines appear on the course calendar that's coming up. Okay. So then on top of that, another aspect of the class is some online discussion forums. I know Dr. Stroud is going to have you do more of these than I am. Mine's a little more modest because it's only 2 credits. I'm having you do other things. So for the readings for the Corbone book, The Wellspring of Worship, it just really doesn't lend itself to lecture, that book. It's not a book to lecture on. So there's going to be no recorded online lectures. So instead, I'm asking you to engage in some thoughtful discussion on the Populi forums before each coming class. Each week, I'm going to post some questions for discussion. For evaluative purposes, your goal is to achieve 5 points each week for a possible of 20 points. So that's what you're going for to get an A, is 20 points. How do you do that? You get 2 points for each new substantive comment. So a substantive comment is usually around 200 words. Around that. Have 1 point per comment. So here's the challenge, perhaps for some of you, is cannot go on and on and on. Right? 200 words is actually, 200 words is like 2/3 of a page double spaced. So it's not short. But don't take 2,000 words to say what you can say in 200. Okay? What do I mean by a substantive point or post? Well, it's well-developed ideas that fully address and develop all aspects of the discussion board question. So I'll ask a question. A substantive comment is something that gives a well-thought-out answer. It has to have factually correct and reflective contributions. They advance the discussion. It pushes it further. Clear evidence of critical thinking. It references readings, lectures, personal experiences to support comments, especially since these are going to be drawn from the Book of Corbone. Mention page numbers, like he says on page 83, this. No long strings of quotes, because that'll fill up 200 words, but, in reference to page 82, he says, right? Posts are easy to read and free of grammatical and spelling errors. So just imagine what this is I pose a question in class and you give a short answer. That's what this is. You're just kind of offering your thoughts, well-founded thoughts on some comments on the reading that get us started before we get to class. And then 1 point for a reply to another post that moves the discussion forward, adding new content. So say Bree gives her substantive comment answering the question, and Adele says, "Oh, that's interesting, but I think this instead," or that makes me think of something else. So it's shorter. It's not a new thought. It's adding to the thought. It's usually at least 50 words. Could be a little more than that. Could be up to 100. An excellent reply post up here on the right should include well-developed analysis of another's post, right? So you're not replying to the original question here as much as you're replying to the other person's post. Factually correct and meaningful extension of the discussion. It moves it somewhere. It's not just repeating what's already there. Clear evidence of critical thinking. Reference to the reading, lecture, or personal experiences to support comment, and again, free of grammatical and spelling errors. Now, notice 5 points each week. You can't get more than 5 points each week, because otherwise you could complete all 20 points in 1 week or one class and not have to engage anymore for 3 more weeks. So you can get a maximum of 5 points. So what does that look like? It's going to look like posting a substantive comment, a reply, and another substantive comment, or a substantive comment, a reply, and then 2 more replies. So that's how the math works. Back over here on the right, points will not be given for posts that do not meet those above criteria. I'll provide ongoing feedback on your post. So I'll let you know how you're doing. If I'm like, well, that's not really a point, I'll let you know. You must post a substantive comment before making replies. So before you tell us what you think of what someone else thinks, you have to tell us what you think, right? Does that make sense? You have to tell us what you think before you tell us what you think about someone else's thoughts. Your post should be a mix of new and substantive comments. Your post should be a mix of new substantive comments and replies to others' posts. To successfully participate in this assignment, it's imperative not to wait until the last minute to do the reading. Now, I know Dr. Stroud is giving you 2 deadlines. I'm not going to do that. Hopefully, you'll be used to this by this point. It might be a good idea to have your first substantive comment up by Thursday so people can reply. But just realize if you're not putting up a substantive comment until Sunday at 11:30 p.m., you're really trying to think of nice words. You're making it really hard on the rest of your classmates because they need to reply. Oh, I'm sorry. Back up. I did get... Based on what... I do remember this now. This is what happens when you have a 24-page syllabus. Based on what I saw in Dr. Stroud's syllabus, I do have a deadline for you. Here it is. Hence, your first substantive comment is now due by 11:59 p.m. Thursday of each week. Hey, that's a great idea. And then you have to have replies then after that. Comments made after 11:59 on Sunday will not be counted for grading purposes, although they're still welcome. I just won't grade them. Okay, so you have to have a substantive comment by Thursday at the end of the day so that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, people can comment on it. Okay. Okay, and then we have a final integrating project. Please see the appendix for details on that. I'm not going to go over that. You can read it. I think Dr. Stroud might go over it because it applies to him too. So do read that before coming to class, and then we can talk about that in class. So that's a project that applies to both Dr. Stroud's section and mine. So you've got class participation. For me, you've got class participation, you've got the project, we have 4 options, and you've got the discussion forums, and then you've got this final project. Okay. Here's the breakdown. I see my formatting got moved. In-class participation is 10%. Those 4 weeks of discussion boards is 1/4 of your grade. The Sacramental Theology project, one of the 4 options, is 30% for me, and then I will also grade my course 35% of that final integrative project that we'll talk about. Grade scale is as same as usual. Late work, well, extenuating circumstances arise. Punctuality is expected in deadlines. Extensions should be discussed with me in advance. I think you've all found I'm relatively flexible, but not too flexible. Without proper advance notice and talking to me, I grade late work half a letter per day. Now the discussion boards, once they close, they close. I won't grade them anymore. I'll look at them if you put anything up and respond, but I'm not going to grade them. That's for the benefit of the whole class. Our tentative schedule, our class is broken into 3 parts. Here you can see it if I put it all up. Part 1 is Sacramental Theology, so we're going to look at the sacraments in particular with the book by Nutt and Syllabus. Originally, when I thought this was a 3-credit class, we were reading all of Syllabus, but because it's 2 credits, I just had to chop things. So we get the really important stuff from Syllabus, and then he does a lot of application in the latter part of the book. So those 2 works are going to give us kind of an overview of sacramental theology, the general principles. Notice I give you some background reading. This is very much recommended, but not required. The Catechism of the Catholic Church. If you're not familiar with that, you might want to take a look at it. It gives background stuff. Part 2 is liturgical theology. We'll have a chance to talk about, there's a lot of overlap between sacramental theology and liturgical theology. They're often taught together, like here. They're not exactly the same. There are aspects of liturgy that are not sacramental, so we'll have a chance to talk about that. Again, more recommended reading. There's the Jean Corbon book for 4 weeks. Notice, by the way, there's it tells you some deadlines here, due dates. We'll talk about the nature of the liturgy from Second Vatican Council, Sacrosanctum Concilium, and a couple other articles. These are some fantastic articles, especially this one, A Theology of the Liturgy. So that's what we're looking for as between the Corbon book and these articles is what is the liturgy. And that'll hopefully give us tools for the rest of our lives. And then part 3 is this mystagogical theology. We're going to look at the rite of baptism. You'll actually want to read the rite of baptism for children. We'll do that for, here on the upper right, for 2 classes. And then the Mass, we'll look at the Mass. I'm going to walk you through the Mass for the rites of the Mass for 2 classes. The reading for Turner, again, is recommended. It's recommended because if I add this in, it goes way over the amount I can give you for a 2-credit class. So especially at the end of class and you're doing papers and stuff, I do want to highlight it. It really is recommended. It's no big deal if you don't read it. If you have extra time as you're writing all these papers, read it. It's a good book to have otherwise as a resource. Okay, that's what we're doing. Online video lectures, you've already seen I'm doing these. Here's one I'm doing right now. Most weeks, other than the part with the Corbon, Most weeks will include online video lectures of about an hour per week. I'm going to keep mine down to an hour per week, again, just for the course load for 2 credits. In conjunction with the assigned reading prior to class. Please consult Populi for details, so I'll be posting them like I do a week in advance. Practical details for me, please bring the assigned reading, whatever I assign you, a copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and a Bible to each class. Now, I know after a few classes of not using the Catechism or the Bible, stop bringing them. Please don't. Please do bring them. For written assignments, please proofread everything. Consider having someone else proofread them as well. I recommend outlining papers as part of the writing process, and I'm happy to give you guidance on that at any time. And also, Dr. Gocher in this writing skills office is available for that as well. Academic integrity. I believe Dr. Stroud will go over all this. Academic integrity we've gone over. Please read this. I won't read it to you. It's don't plagiarize. Computers are fine in class. Use them appropriately. Fine. Here's information on writing consultation services, which is available to everyone. Again, highly recommend even good writers to make use of this because you can become better writers. I use Dr. Gocher all the time to look at my stuff. Course evaluations, we're going to ask you to do those at the end, and there are learning accommodations for Americans from the Americans with Disabilities Act. Ask you to just read all those. Those are just general policies and support. So that is the stuff for the Sacramental theology piece. Here's the final integrating project. Ask you to read that. I believe Dr. Stroud will go over that as well. That's part of that. Okay, so that's all Sacramental theology. Now, here is the oblation internship. What do you have to do for this, right? All of you have either gotten or are getting to me very, 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 very soon, your proposals. Well, how are we grading you on this? So there is a Populi class section class set up for the oblation internship, and there are certain things you need to do. Oops. So I'll show you some of that as well. It's 1 credit. It's pass-fail. Here's the course description. Hypothetically, you've seen this, I hope. Inspired by the Dehonian concept of oblation. The fall is oblation, the spring is reparation. Those are those 2 aspects of the spirituality of the priest of the Sacred Heart. And by the way, Dr. Russell on our Saturdays is going to be talking about oblation throughout the fall. Inspired by the Dehonian concept of oblation, the student identifies and evaluates the pressing needs and brokenness in the world as seen through the lens of your powerful question. Working with a supervisor, priest, deacon, lay minister, appropriate professional, the student creates and completes a needs assessment in a parish or in another area relevant to your pastoral or professional duties. So the idea for the fall is to go out and find what's the need. Where are things not what they're supposed to be? And then the reparation internship in the spring is to address those needs. So here's the requirements for a passing grade. And you really do need all of these. A minimum of 25 hours between activity and delivery. That's actually being on site and doing something. And discussion contact with the supervisor. Now, ideally, that would be something like 20 hours of the activity delivery on the site and 5 hours with the supervisor. That can be a little fluid. It should not flip. It shouldn't be 20 hours talking to my supervisor, 5 hours actually doing something. It is an internship. I'll go over how to track all this in a moment. Weekly online postings, a minimum of 10. So a little more online discussion for this. Active participation in apostolic Saturday sessions. So part of our Saturdays are going to be devoted with me to the internship. Completion of a needs assessment, and I've got a little outline for you on that. And completion of a supervisor evaluation. So for me to put a P for pass in Populi, I need to see these 5 things. How are you going to show me this? The 25 hours. On Populi, maintain your section of the internship log. You're going to record the date, the amount of time you spent in hours, the activity done, both for internship activity delivery or discussion contact with your supervisor. When you tell me the activity, the detail for the activity, provide enough detail in that description to answer at a glance the question, what did you do during this time? Please be sure to click on your worksheet on the spreadsheet and not change anyone else's data. Always keep a backup of your information on the log. Okay, here's what this means. When you go to Populi and you click right here on Oblation Internship, and you can go into, I think I put it in 2 different places. I put it in the Lessons, Oblation Internship Log. It's a link, and that link opens let's see if it loads. There it is. It opens a Google Doc with a spreadsheet. Okay, so you'll see everybody has down on the bottom here little what do you call them? Little tabs. So right now it's on Amy's. Her name is at the top. Let's go to Bill's. There's Bill's in the top. Bill hasn't done anything yet. Come on, Bill, get with it. Bill would he does some activity. He's going to list his date that he did it. All this is formatted. That'll give you a date. In fact, you can see I can put in September 10th, 2019. Right, and it'll automatically format it. Okay, how many hours? Well, I spent 3.5 hours, and it's going to count those up. Notice some are for actual delivery, some are for contact with the supervisor. Just put it in the right one. At the end, it's going to total up both of these columns and give me a grand total, so I can see that you got 25 hours in. And then just a description in text of what you did. These save automatically. You don't need to go in here and click save. In fact, if I just type, it won't let me type there. Let's say I put 5 in here and press enter. Notice up here it says saving. All changes saved. So that's how it is. Make sure you're typing on yours and not messing with somebody else's. That's why you want to keep a backup, just in case somebody else messes with yours. In the Oblation Internship, if you go into the Info tab, it's also right here. So that's number 1. You're keeping an online log of your hours and what you did. Okay, weekly online postings. Each week, new discussions will be posted to Populi for the Oblation Internship. You're asked to make substantial contributions to the discussion. You're required to make such substantial contributions for at least 10 weeks of the semester. So we have 15 weeks. You need to give me 10. Your substantial contribution here is around 300 words. 300 words is about 1 page double-spaced. You're also encouraged to use this forum to engage in discussion and feedback on others' internships, although you don't have to. So let's say somebody puts up their 300 words, you read it, and you want to say something about it. That's where you can do it. That's not required. 10 of these substantial 300-word posts are. Now, if you go to Populi, you're in. You go to the Oblation Internship. If you go to Lessons, it'll say Week 1. There it is. You go in. I put up 3 discussions. You click on 1. That's the title. It says, how is your internship related to your powerful question? Give me 300 words on that. Why did you choose this internship? What motivated you? 300 words on that. What else did I give? Opportunities. As you begin your internship, what are the greatest opportunities you see? So there's 3 for Week 1. So this could be 1 of your 10. Give me 300 words on that. You can find that, I believe, you can find that also just in discussions. There you go. So you can find it in Lessons or Discussions. So there's that. Then, active participation in the Apostolic Saturdays. You really just have to show up and participate. Each month, a portion, 1 hour of the Apostolic Saturday will be devoted to discussing the internships. If there's any relevant instructions, I'll give them to you before that. It shouldn't be much work outside of the actual Saturday itself. You're asked to actively participate in all group activities related to the internship on Apostolic Saturdays, so you can't just sit there passively. You have to engage. And I know some of you already have to miss one. I have to miss one myself. If due to extenuating circumstances you must miss a Saturday, please see me in advance to do makeup work. Would have you do something to make up for this. Okay. Then you have to complete a needs assessment. Remember, this Oblation Internship is what's the need? What's the hurts? What's what needs my action? Now, I get that some of you are in a situation where you already have a sense of the need. I get that. And I'm not asking that anyone sits around not doing anything for this first semester. If you're already actively addressing a need this first semester, great. But it's not a built-in part of our assessment here. Some of you do need to figure out what is the need or refine what is the need. All right. So this needs to be an understood part of your internship that first semester you're saying, amidst whatever I am doing, I'm finding a gap. So that gap is going to be expressed in a needs assessment. The fall ablation internship concludes with the creation of a needs assessment, which will serve as a guide for your spring reparation internship. You know the need in the fall, and in the spring you're going to address the need. You're to identify and evaluate the pressing needs and brokenness you find in your internship area. Needs assessments come in various forms, and you're not held to any one format, so I'm not telling you how to do this if it's a narrative paper, an outline, or anything. You can be creative in how you present this to me. You can explore this website, needsassessment.org. It has different models that are there, with some latitude for variety based on your particular internship. Each final needs assessment should include this. 1, provide a brief summary of the experience. That is, give the reader basic context. Let's say I give this to my colleague in the next office and they're reading it. They want to know what you did. So a paragraph or two on the basic background. Describe the internship setting and the work you undertook or observed. That's number 1. Number 2, identify the optimal situation. What should the situation in your internship setting look like? And why should it look like that? Who says it should be? Who says that's how it should be? What would be the benefit and to whom if the optimal situation was realized? So part of the need, part of the gap, part of the hurt is where should it be? So identify the optimal situation. 3, assess the actual situation. This is a lot of what you're doing as you're in the internship through observation and other methods, which I'll outline below. Determine what the situation really is here and now on the ground in your setting. That brings you to number 4. That is identifying the gaps. The optimal in number 2 minus the actual in number 3 gives you number 4, the gap, right? The optimal minus the actual is the gap. What is you could ask questions like, what is present in the actual situation that needs to be modified or removed in order to achieve the optimal? Or what is absent in the actual situation that needs to be realized in order to achieve the optimal? So what is the gap? What's not there that needs to be there? And then, then why is that gap there? Explore the causes of the gap. So I talked to Amanda. People aren't going to Mass. There's a gap. Well, why? And we might have opinions about that, but we want to get as data driven on this as possible, because if we're addressing the gap in the reparation, we have to be addressing the real causes. So based on your own observations, existing data, there might be research out there on your problem. Based on the input of others, identify as specifically as possible the causes of number 4, the causes of the gap. Why does the gap exist? Report all relevant and likely possible causes. Probably there's more than one cause for a lot of the gaps you find. Now, each step should make use of various forms of data, not just your opinion. People aren't going to Mass because they're not well catechized. Well, it's probably true, but let's go get some data. Possible methods of collecting data include personal observation. There you are in the situation. Do some observation. What's going on? Reviewing current research or documents. Some people you'll find have already done research in the area you're looking at. Do some interviews of individuals. Do some surveys, online surveys or paper surveys. Do some focus groups, which are basically interviews of small groups, right? Get some various opinions. Talk to your supervisor. Talk to lots of people. Be sure in this needs assessment to mention any and all data sources you incorporate. That's due Monday, December 10th. And then you also, so that's really the final conclusion of this. Now, don't go crazy for length, right? This is 1 credit. So, I mean, provide the summary, couple paragraphs. What's the optimal situation and how do you know that? Couple paragraphs. Assess the actual situation. Oh, that might be a page or 2. You're going to tell me what's going on. Identify the gaps. That's going to flow from 2 or 3, maybe a page, maybe more. Causes of the gaps. You're drawing in some data now. That might be a page or so. So what are you talking there? 5-ish pages, maybe. So don't overdo this because it is 1 credit. Okay. We don't want you to sacrifice time in the internship for writing a paper, but this is the report at the end. And then you have to have a completed supervisor evaluation. Your internship supervisor on site will be asked to provide their feedback and evaluation. Now it is your responsibility to see that the form is returned. I'm going to give you a form early in the semester once I develop it and give it to you. And it's your responsibility to get it back to me by December 10th from them. So it's not on them. I'm not going to make phone calls to your supervisor. I give it to you. You give it to them. You get it back from them. You give it to me. That in 50 minutes is the syllabus. Okay, that's why I didn't do it in class, because now I would have 20 minutes to discuss the reading. So, take a look at the syllabus. Hopefully, I was going to say hopefully you've watched this video, but if you're hearing me, that means you have. I'm going to post a discussion link in the under the syllabus in this video. If you have any questions about the syllabus, put them there. We can get to some of those before we even get to class. We can also talk about the syllabus in class as well. Thanks for sitting through this. Most exciting of all lectures. And now we'll have a chance really to dig into sacramental theology.